Hello there, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be revisiting an old topic that I explored last time in 2018, but to get us started, there's this drawing that I did in 2013, that I then did again in 2014, that I then did again in 2019, actually, it wasn't 2018, good job editing me for remembering, that now I decided to do again, because I did the original 10 years ago, and the last one I did 4 years ago, so I figured it'd be a good time to experiment, try this again, and see how it goes, especially because I haven't really done much digital art lately, so I just wanted to, something that's not as mentally taxing to ease myself into it. Plus, I just had this idea that I felt like, I always kind of pictured this drawing with the different sorts of energy to it, and even though I've drawn it 3 times before, I never, I just kind of, the last couple times I've redrawn it, the previous time I added the skateboard, and the time before that I added the buildings in the background and stuff like that. So I did do some changes to it, but for the most part, especially the pose of the character, I left the same. So this time I decided to just really embrace actually making some creative choices and not trying to be as faithful. It's still, and I mean, when you look at it, you probably see that it's the same sort of drawing, it's just not exactly the same drawing, and I just really wanted to kind of give myself, and I feel like I'll just continue to use this one. Drawing with Waffles has this series where she's been drawing the same Rapunzel for I don't know how many years it is now. The last time I saw it was 6 of them, so she does this, and I kind of like the idea of through the years redrawing the same piece over and over and over again, and it's just tracking kind of what you've been focusing on for that time period through revisiting the same concept. And so this one, since I'd already done 3 times already, and the first one wasn't even when I was that much of the beginner, I think in 2013 I was already kind of entering the intermediate phase of being a digital artist, so I figured that this one would be a really good one to continue the trend. I have another one where I did a couple redraws, and I think I have another one, a self-portrait that I've done 3 times already as well, the insistence of my mother, but this one felt a little bit more fun. Plus, my friend Sav kind of had suggested it, and she had suggested the first redraw initially as well, so I was like, alright, let's just do this. And yeah, I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about kind of technical, being technically capable, and also just the difference between being able to accurately draw something compared to being able to accurately portray something, and how that's sort of different. And that's kind of what I'm feeling between the 2019 version of this compared to this version of it. I think the anatomy was especially the planes of the face and the perspective of the face is really technically impressive in the 2019 version, where his head was tilted up and he was smiling, and you can kind of see the perspective there in his mouth and his nose, and the way that his hair and his brow goes, and he's kind of tilting his head back while he's laughing, as well as a bit more expressiveness in how he's positioned, he's still leaning his head on one hand, but the other hand is waving. Meanwhile, with this one, I just really wanted to try to capture more of the energy that I kind of always saw this character. So this character didn't officially have a name or a backstory or anything like that, but as time's gone on, I've kind of just started building this very, very loose sort of headcanon in combination with this other character, I guess, that I've drawn a couple times before. I'll just insert a photo of him right now, and I'm kind of having this idea of this character, his name is Ryu, and the other character, his name is Drake, and then they're skating buddies, one of them in the roller skates obviously, and this guy with the skateboard. So I don't know, I'm starting to play around with this idea since I've been spending more time with these characters, but obviously it's nothing very solid since I haven't sat down and really brainstormed anything, but I just kind of like the aesthetic of it altogether. But anyway, in spending more time with this character, I see this guy as a really happy-go-lucky, really quick to smile, really truly warm on the inside, while Drake on the other side is a little bit more kind of has a bit of a prankster kind of aesthetic, a little bit more likely to laugh at somebody's misfortune rather than just laugh because something's silly. And I feel I didn't really capture that sort of essence of this greenhead character Ryu before, because I was just really trying to the initial one, he feels kind of smiling because he's bored, and then the second one also felt really empty in the way that his expression portrayed, and then the third one, the 2019 one, it felt a little bit more joyous, but it wasn't really I was kind of so determined to try to replicate the previous years' interpretations. I wasn't capable of making the executive decision that his eyes should be closed, for example, because in the previous ones his eyes were open, even though I ended up changing his eye color. In the first two his eyes were green, and the second one his eyes were brown. I think, you know, if he were to have his eyes open right now, they would be brown as well. But I think I was really just determined to try to maintain the essence of the previous one, so I wasn't able to make the executive decision to close his eyes while he was smiling. But then when I was like, and I mean, you saw a couple minutes ago when I was trying to sketch out the face, I did like 8 or 9 like false starts with drawing his face, and I just wasn't able to get the kind of emotion that I wanted while keeping his eyes open, or like trying a more open, like, I don't know, I was trying to draw like more realistic noses or more simple noses, and I finally settled on this expression, and this, like, I feel really captures the essence of this character, how I've been picturing him these 10 years. And I just felt like this was really the fit. And then I also changed a little bit his pose, because when I was sort of, you know, trying to mimic the pose myself, it kind of like your torso has to twist in a really weird way for you to rest your elbow on something that's behind you and also lean your face on it. So then I decided to, you know, put his arm down, and so he's still leaning on the like little concrete ledge behind him, but he's not leaning his head on his hand, but he's still waving the same way. And then the other thing that I kind of made the executive decision is that in the first one I kind of drew some like skater shoes that weren't really detailed. I was just trying to like get through with it. But then in the second one I was like, no, these are Adidas Superstars, let's make them Adidas Superstars. And then in the third one it was a little bit harder to see, because it was more focused on perspective and actually like doing the foreshortening on the shoes rather than having them be accurate Adidas based on my reference. But in this one I was like, just because in the first one I made them a dark grey with barely any white doesn't mean, like, I've been picturing them as these Adidas shoes this entire time. These 10 years I've been picturing them as these Adidas shoes. I'm just gonna give him the classic Adidas shoes. I didn't know why. I mean, I kind of knew why. I was sort of like not wanting to use any like pure white or even just white elements because it didn't feel realistic. But I mean, I have a pair of, I mean, my Adidas don't have the black lines on them. They have like silver lines on them because I got them as a secondhand thing or whatever. But like, they're white Adidas shoes. I mean, come on, how many people have these? So I just decided to like make the executive decision again and change the color of the Adidas shoes. And similarly, in the first, second, in all the drawings before this one, I had him in a kind of, he was wearing a hoodie and then he was wearing like a quarter sleeve cardigan or something on top of it. I don't really get it. It was like part of the aesthetic to begin with. We're having like the kind of sleeve at his elbow but then hoodie underneath it, but I just sort of like felt that wasn't really capturing the essence. It didn't make sense. I've never seen anyone really wear that anymore, and I didn't really like know why I kept maintaining that through the years. So I just decided, okay, which kind of jacket fits the skater aesthetic a little bit and then works well with a hoodie underneath it. And so I was like, all right, let's just give him a bomber jacket or a letterman jacket or whatever you want to call it. And then I wanted also to add a little bit more detail, because in the previous ones, like, yes, he had the like 2 layers of clothing, but it felt kind of flat. So I decided to give the stripes. I didn't want to give him white sleeves because that's a typical letterman jacket. I didn't want to do that, so I found the ones that were flat color had those little lines on the cuffs. So I added that, and then the letter itself, S for skater. I didn't think too deep into that one. And then also the little drawstrings on the hoodie. In the previous ones, I think in the first one I didn't even include it, but in the last 2 I did, but they were the same color as the hoodie. So I decided to try to continue to add just that little bit more detail and make them white with those little like stripy things on them, and then also give him a ring just to add those extra bits of detail. And then you'll notice by this point, obviously we've been working on it for a while, that I decided to set the drawing in sunset rather than during like noon bright blue sky daytime, and that's mainly because I've been focusing that on that when I do digital painting lately. Like I spend a lot more time focusing on the drawing and like the poses and like the character features when I'm drawing in my sketchbook, but when I do digital art nowadays, I really take that as an advantage to really play with color and to play with lighting, because it's a lot easier to just kind of mess around with that and correct it and fix it and tweak it and do all those other things when you're doing that digital versus when you're doing that on a sketchbook. So that's kind of where I've been really enjoying doing digital art. Like the last painting that I did of my character Aries, I did a 2-tone lighting with a harsh yellow and a blue, and it was like a very striking, not super, you know, studio lighting sort of idea, and that to me feels like a lot more fun, and that's where I really wanted to encapsulate the differences between maybe 2019 and now. I don't necessarily feel like I've gotten very much better like at anatomy or anything like that, or even perspective for that reason. I feel like the 2019 one was very much of a breakthrough for this kind of piece where I did the fisheye lens, and I decided to continue that through for this time round. But yeah, I really wanted to play with color and then also incorporating more detail. So it's not just like slapping textures, Photoshop textures on stuff. It's adding that like chain link fence, which took forever. It's adding that like clouds. It's adding like the 3-point perspective. I also was experimenting with playing with the perspective grid on Art Studio Pro, which was very helpful, and all those other things. So yeah, overall, I'm very excited to continue this sort of exercise in redrawing my skateboard view every couple of years to see my improvement. And then let's just take a quick little recap over my previous iterations of this. And yeah, let me know which one was your favorite. Let me know what you think. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you sometime.